the program can already be effective after 12 weeks, while with therapy you need half a year to have the same effects. So
Is that right?
it,
Wow.
it seems that doing some of the work up front and really quickly can already boost your mental health a lot.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Integral Wellbeing podcast, where we explore the true causes of well-being from an integral perspective. I'm your host, Timo Peters, and my guest today is Dr. Inga Grossmann, former professor of psychology at the HMKW, if I say it right, University of Applied Sciences in Germany, and serial entrepreneur in the field of digital therapeutics, bringing evidence-based mental health programs to underserved communities for a minimal cost. She currently works as the executive director and founder of Rethink Wellbeing, which provides online mental health programs, mostly based on third wave cognitive behavioral therapy, and currently mainly for people in the effective altruism community struggling with mental health challenges that are kind of limiting their productivity and impact. And for full disclosure, I have been doing some unpaid volunteering as a facilitator for Rethink. So welcome, Inga. I'm excited to talk to you.
Thank you, Timo, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. And yeah, you did a great job as a facilitator, as a volunteer at Rethink.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was really fun to do. I had a blast. I felt like I kind of became friends with the people I was in the group with, just kind of catching up every week. And it was really like an informal, nice vibe. So really fun experience.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. So last time we spoke, you told me that you had been in Thailand for a little bit. I was very, very jealous being in Holland, very dark, very dreary. Curious to hear how that was.
Yeah, one of the upsides of remote work, right? There's the downside of not meeting
Yeah.
people in the office every day, but that's definitely a plus, being able to escape the dark and gray European winters.
Yeah. So nice. Cool. So, yeah, the main topic I would really love to talk to you about today is sort of how can we scale evidence-based mental health to help everyone in the world struggling with mental suffering? Because I remember when I first encountered the problem, kind of through effective altruism, looking at some of the big pressing issues in the world, and just realizing how many people actually have some of these, mental health disorders, whatever you want to call them. But there's clearly a lot of psychological suffering out there, and how many people just basically can't get help. There's no infrastructure existing, or the costs are very high, etc. So I would love to have that sort of as the main theme in our conversation. But before we get into that, I actually would love to ask you a little bit about your background. I'm very curious. Obviously, you have a background in psychology research. You were a professor for a little while. And I saw that your PhD was on machine learning to predict couples' relationship quality. And I have to ask you about this, of course. This sounds too juicy.
Yeah, I'm a secret method nerd, a method collector. So I like to inform myself about all the different ways that are out there to answer certain types of questions. And I just found that one is better to answer different types of questions when you have the vast portfolio of everything qualitative, quantitative, from
Mm,
technology, machine learning, and also statistics
mm,
and user
mm.
research.
Yeah, yeah. So what did it involve? So you were trying to predict couples' relationship quality. It said based on their personality traits. Sounds a little bit similar to if you're familiar with the Gottman Institute. They're
Yeah,
doing
of
some of
course.
this. Yeah, yeah. Very
Yeah,
cool
of course.
stuff.
The studies were part of my background research,
Oh, were they?
and yeah, they were. I mean, they also used the machine learning prediction approach. So they used the same type of predictive model building, and they also predict relationship quality and also if the relationship stays for longer. And
Mm,
they do so pretty impressively in that one longitudinal study. But yeah, sadly, I heard that in the realm of the replication crisis, some researchers tried to replicate his results and couldn't. So I would
oh, really?
yeah interpret that with a lot of caution.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Like
I was,
I think the predictive quality was also alarmingly high. So maybe that was a warning sign. I don't know, but it was like I think 90%, right? 80, 90% of
yeah.
correct classifications.
if I remember correctly, it was like they were looking at certain behaviors that the couples were exhibiting in their
Right,
relationship, and then they could very easily predict sort of, is the relationship going to last long term?
right.
Like you said, alarmingly good at predicting it. Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's something to look at. So I'm actually curious, what initially motivated you to go into the field of psychology out of all the things you could do?
Yeah, I've been asked that question quite a lot, and I think there's two answers depending from when you look. One is
Mm,
that psychology books were among the first ones that I read because my father recommended them to me. So when I
mm,
was my parents split up when I was 6, and then when I was 8, 9, my father gave me this book from Thomas J. Harris. I'm okay, you're okay. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
no, no, not familiar.
Probably not as evidence based as what I learned during studies, but yeah, it's an introduction to a transactional analysis. So basically, like taking communication styles and different ways to communicate apart, and then yeah,
Mm,
I remember how when we drove from my mom's place, where I lived, then to his place for 2 hours, we were always discussing interactions and role playing, and that was a lot of fun. So that was how my passion has been created. And
yeah.
then I know when I finished my school when I was 17, I went to a bunch of lectures, so including law and medicine and also economics and psychology. And
Mm.
the psychology ones were just it's a little shameful to say that they were the easiest. So I
Ah,
decided to maybe I should go the easy route.
yeah. Did it turn out that way when you
It
actually
did turn
started?
out
That
that way. It did, yeah.
it was
But
easy.
it was easy, but it might be that I just have a special thing for psychological topics. So
Sure.
just
It's just a
um,
match. Yeah.
I think if I had to do it again, though, if anyone's watching that wants to study psychology or is thinking about going into the field, I would probably instead study medicine because it still
Really?
allows for going into most professions that are related to psychology, but in a more efficient way. So
Mm.
apart from the status being a little higher as a, like they would say, real doctor, it only takes half a year to write their thesis that they get the doctor degree with. And
Mm.
for I think for nearly every other science field, it's more than 3 years, right? Three to five, if you're lucky.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So even if someone wanted to be a psychotherapist, for example, you would still recommend that route.
I think that highly depends on the country where people are from.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the
In
country.
general. Yeah,
But if I
yeah.
wanted to do the same thing that I'm doing now, I think that would be probably the way to go into that direction quicker. So
Ah,
if one wants to do something on a global scale, if you want to become a psychotherapist, that's I think a different game. If I wanted to become a psychotherapist, I would check where the education is as short and evidence-based as possible because it shows that the experience doesn't really correlate with the effectiveness of a therapist, but more how good the person is in relationship building. So I just like
mm,
get the quickest education possible. I think in the UK
interesting.
they have for no matter what you did before, you can become a low-level CBT therapist. They call it, I think, so that maybe that's easy to attain. I don't know if you can apply as a foreigner, but
Mm,
with that title, then and additionally pimping yourself up in relationship skills, you'd probably already be a great practitioner.
mm.
I don't
That's
know if
so
that works.
interesting.
That's just like a pulled out of my pocket. So
Yeah, yeah.
if I would want to become a psychotherapist, I would do that. If I would want to become an more founder or entrepreneur in the mental health field and scale interventions, probably medicine or economics be the way.
Ah, interesting. And did you yourself ever consider becoming a psychotherapist, really taking that route completely, or was
Oh,
it more the research side?
I did, yeah, and that's another very personal answer, but I am too sensitive for dealing with people that are really having a bad time a lot.
Mm.
So I did an internship in psychiatry, and after a few days, I just felt unable to go back there and look into one of the saddest eyes that I had ever seen, and decided, okay, I think
Mm.
I want to help people, but I'm better with concepting and problem solving anyway, so I can maybe in systems thinking. So why don't I
Mm.
just help the people that help people, and and
Yeah.
thereby help even more people. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's interesting.
I
Yeah.
admire everyone who can sit with that and yeah, have empathy, and at the same time stay strong themselves, and
Mm.
also be patient. I think I'm also too impatient for becoming a therapist. I want things to be quick and effective.
Quick and effective. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Right.
maybe that's kind of why you went more into this scalable interventions, digital therapeutics, that sort of direction.
That plays into it too. Yeah.
Yeah. What was sort of the first hint to you that that might be a more impactful way to help people with their mental health? Was there a particular moment or?
Was there a particular moment? I think it was during the internship when I thought about the potential routes, because I also noticed that by just observing the system, like the in psychiatry, like how the processes went, how they delivered the interventions, how they spoke to people, how one could easily improve the whole service and the whole care without changing too much. So
Mm.
I noticed that that is more of my strong suit, and there were two ways to go about that. One would have been to go into research and trying to have more applied research results that would help people to improve the care. And we still have that as part of also Rethink Wellbeing, or of the other organizations that I worked at, where we have this ongoing tracking and the ongoing clinical effectiveness and engagement measurements to make sure that we deliver the best possible programs. So yeah, that's and the second route was to found something and develop own interventions. But I didn't have that in mind
Not
until I
initially.
discovered until I discovered the first startup that I worked in, the
Yeah,
ARIA
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
company.
maybe we can go to that actually. Yeah, I saw that you were the chief scientific officer at ARIA app. So this was a mood reflection app, it said, to support the treatment of depression. So tell me about this. What was this app?
It was a fun time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I met one of my best friends there. She was this CEO. So ARIA, yeah, it was a mood tracking app, and we added different intervention techniques to the app incrementally. So it started with an activity planner. So maybe if you have gone into therapy CBT for depression, you know that like one of the core elements is that you teach people how they build up pleasant activities again. So
Mm.
that was the first additional thing, and I then decided to write a research and development grant application for them to get governmental funding,
Yeah.
and that also, to my surprise, worked out. So it was about developing an AI model that would help people to get the technique at the point in time when they need it most. And yeah, but we then sold the startup to another company. The name is Hello Better, but
Mm.
I ended my work there pretty quickly to work somewhere else. So I don't even know what the outcome of the project was, but
Okay.
maybe it led to some publications. I believe it did.
Okay. That's so interesting though. Is that behavioral activation what you were just talking
Yeah,
about?
right.
That sort of
Exactly. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So kind of helping people plan those in and staying accountable and that sort of thing.
right.
Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
there's there's a list. Different therapeutic manuals have lists of activities that people like, and yeah, it might be it might be cool to, if you had an AI that would suggest like the activities that are most likely to help you, right? And instead of
Mm.
screening through 200 activities and saying if you tried that already.
So this is what the app would actually do? It would use AI to try and predict that, or?
Um, that's what we plan to do. I maybe they did.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, and then after that, I think you started working at Hello Better. You just mentioned it. I found actually there are some of the statistics about sort of the global burden of mental
Yeah,
health issues. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this actually. That they said on their website that over 10% of the global population live with a mental health disorder.
yeah,
Even though I kind of don't like that language, people have different views on whether we should call it disorders, but and that even in the best healthcare systems, only about 10% of people actually receive care from a therapist, a psychotherapist, or a psychiatrist. And that about 30% of people diagnosed with a mental health disorder only receive care from a GP.
it's
And
shocking,
this
right?
is really shocking. I mean, yeah. I mean, when did you become aware of sort of the global scale of the issue? Because I don't know if this is a part of psychology education generally, sort of the worldwide scale.
Um, they did teach us that in our studies. So that how big the problem is, how large the problem is, I noticed in my during my master's education at the Humboldt University. Um, yeah, I like the most likely like the largest reasons
Hmm.
why people don't seem to get the care that they might need are like it has different causes, like, and it's just one reason that people might not have access to care. For example, when they live in more rural areas,
Hmm.
or even when they live in cities there, and there's just the coverage is too little and the waiting times are long. But
Hmm.
most of those people seem to be harder to reach or harder to treat target groups where people are just not convinced that therapy would be the right thing for them, that might help them. So, for
Hmm.
example, health insurances in Germany, they're usually very keen on getting better education about mental health topics out there, like raising mental health awareness, and that anti-stigmatization campaigns, or making sure that men also know that it's okay to ask for support from others. That still seems to be a huge issue. Like when men go to the doctor, it's often too late. um,
Yes.
yeah. So
Anecdotally, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Which is an interesting question in itself, why that would be. Curious if you have thoughts about that, actually. Um, I'm not sure.
I guess the social role education plays into it, right?
Yeah. 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 I wonder.
That
Um,
we
why do you think our current system fails to serve these people adequately? You mentioned that on some level, it's like a lack of belief that this is, the right approach, that therapy would actually work for them. But I suspect there are more forces at play, maybe more
yeah,
systemic. If you have thoughts on that.
definitely. I believe that there might be three pillars for that. One would be that there is no education about how being mentally in need looks like. So
Mm,
what it actually is, so that people know, oh, okay, this is something that I can actually go to a doctor with, and it's okay to have that. So
mm,
it's just the perception of mental health issues. And the second pillar would be that in the environments that people usually live in, like workplaces or schools or also homes, that we do not have that we do not put an emphasis on having this designed in need-aligned ways. So
mm,
in ways that our psyche might need to be happy, like promoting community, promoting learning and growth, promoting just chilling and relaxing, and also helping people to act pro-socially with each other and not, for example, start mobbing, or in the worst case, criminal actions. I mean, we We all know that from school, and we can't call it criminal because they're underage. But like what kids do to each other is horrible sometimes, and
Oh
we
yeah.
can measure that this has long-lasting effects on mental health and suicidal ideation, for example.
Yeah, yeah. No, it can get pretty vicious. There's actually something I talked to Professor Greg Enriquez about. I asked him the same, and he sort of suggested that actually, in a way, when you look at sort of history of it, the more power psychotherapists got in our society, the worse the mental health problems got. Not to imply that that is causation, but to say it doesn't seem to be solving the issue, actually, and that a
Yeah, that would
psychotherapist.
be the third pillar, that even if people get help, that often this help is not the evidence-based type of help that you would wish for. So many therapists don't use the treatment as like based on the guidelines, but just
Hmm,
and they're also, this is also not checked by anyone, and they don't even have to measure pre-post success
yeah,
of the
which is
or
remarkable, actually, if you think about it. Like, as a medical doctor, at least you have to be able to show, I guess, that you actually, cured the person and so on. But in
and
this case,
we can show it, right? I
yeah,
don't understand the lack of quality control with that, and also helping therapists to get really good in the thing that matters to deliver the message, like the therapeutic alliance, right? That would be
mm,
nice too.
yes, yes. And
And then
maybe just,
having just with all the research that we already have on guided digital interventions, it would also be good to implement in more countries this stepped care model, where most people are covered by this low threshold interventions, and then only directed towards experts if they're a more complex case with deeper seated issues, or if they have something that's not within the the realm of the usual suspects, like depression and anxiety.
mm, yeah, I'm wondering actually about this, that how much of the sort of mental health disorders that I just mentioned, the sort of 10% of people that suffer from these things, how much of that is sort of moderate to mild versus very severe? Um, do we know anything about that
I
globally?
think we do, but I would have to check as well.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I can
Yeah.
recommend the World Statistics website for that. They usually have the up to date data on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. It would be an interesting distribution. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's kind of something that I heard from Stephen Hayes also, that, especially for the more moderate sort of suffering that people experience, Stephen Hayes being the founder of ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, for the more moderate sort of suffering, it's very likely that a very generic sort of intervention could really help so many people. It doesn't have to be extremely personalized, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and so, yeah, it just seems so bizarre to me that over the course of my entire childhood in school and everything, I never learned anything about how to deal with my own mental health or anything, even like general, nothing. And I really wonder why that is. If you want to prevent these things from arising, why wouldn't you do that? You know?
You're absolutely right. Spot on. I also don't know, and I wish I knew a better
Yeah.
answer to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we can get back to later of like, could we, can we implement some of these things in the education system itself? As I think I told you in our last conversation, the most of the people that I spoke to who tried to do such a thing go into the school system, actually make it a regular part of their curriculum. They just
And
failed every
there's
time.
some countries that do that. There's, for example, the Kiva program. I think it's in one of the countries in the Nordics. They have this in nearly every school, and they
Oh,
distribute it in also other countries already. So there are approaches like that. I mean, the stepped care model with the guided digital interventions also is a part of the healthcare system there, I believe,
wow.
and in the Netherlands as well, right?
I'm not aware of any, to be honest, but the Kiva program, you say,
The Kiva
in
program is in one country in the Nordics. I think I
yeah,
can
yeah,
check it later and
interesting.
send it to you.
Yeah. Because, part of the reason I got into this whole topic was actually that I read a report by Charity Entrepreneurship, one of
Yeah.
the sort of research organizations in this effective altruism space, and they did a report on sort of guided self-help as a way of reducing mental suffering. And they exposed me to all of this scientific literature showing all these meta-analyses, systematic reviews. Wow, you can really have very, very impressive results, very comparable to in-person one-on-one therapy with these kind of guided self-help interventions. It can take many different forms, like a book form, or somebody calls you, or, usually it's workbook based.
It's true. We find the same at Rethink Wellbeing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I guess one of the questions that I have is sort of which therapeutic modalities can really work in this sort of self-help format? I mean, at Rethink, you chose the third wave CBT kind of approach. You had a pilot program on internal family systems, which we can talk about later. But like, what sort of therapy modalities work in this way? Because, of course, certain maybe psychodynamic approaches, you really do need that one-on-one, face-to-face. Curious if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah. So if it is about learning a certain skill, so about the hands-on techniques, and if it's about psychoeducation, you can, of course, outsource all that and do that in a digital format. And there is the parts that you need to experience with other people that might be helpful. And you mentioned now the more psychodynamic approaches. They, for example, need this interaction between the therapist so says their theory of change, then allows to the different old dysfunctional patterns to resurface and then be edited live. Like that's not my school of therapy, so I don't know a lot about the psychodynamic approaches, just in theory, so I can't really say more about how it works, and if maybe parts of this would, for example, be transferable to a large language model. I'd be curious if there's if there are psychodynamists that have an opinion about that. They would probably say that it's not possible. But if I was still in university research, I think I'd give this a try.
You'd want to do a study on that. That sounds fascinating. Totally, yeah. So you would just be talking to the AI, and it would sort of help you sort out some of these.
Maybe
issues,
if it is possible to get to the same level of empathy and cohesion that you have with a therapist, but I don't know if that's possible. If a real person will still be needed for that. That it might be the case that still there is an incremental benefit of having this surfacing in a real relationship that's not perfect also. So I believe one of the reasons why the therapeutic relationship can work is because it doesn't, it allows the imperfections of the therapist also to become the teaching subject, because the patient has to deal with that too. And then a large language model would probably not be flawed, or maybe we need to
build that in.
Perfectly flawed.
Make a few off-color jokes. I bet it can do that. I've seen that happen way too many times, to be honest. Yeah.
But it can always say, "Hey, I'm just a large language model." Right?
Yeah. Don't blame me. Yeah. You're projecting on me. Yeah. That's interesting, though. I did hear actually recently about someone who did it with IFS, with internal family systems, made a large language model that does that sort of process. And I think I saw that you know at Rethink you also did a pilot of this kind of approach. Maybe for people who don't know IFS, can you give maybe a very short, sort of outline of what the general approach is?
Let's see. Yeah. So it uses the idea, it employs the idea that our psyche consists of different parts that can be in coherence or in conflict with each other. So, for example, many people probably have heard of the inner child, or maybe they know of the inner critical voice that that also many of us have sometimes. And then you probably also are aware of when it seems like two parts and you have a different opinion on something, and they're going into this inner dialogue and trying to figure out what to do actually. So, some coaching or therapeutic approaches try to come up with a model of how to separate these different parts of the psyche, to let them interact with each other so that they can navigate conflict in an easier way. And one of the third wave CBT approaches also does that. It's called schema therapy. So, and the IFS approach, so internal family systems, it's like it's called internal family systems because it's like the parts are constitute an internal family. And it's just the easiest way that I found so far to separate the psyche. So one disadvantage of the schema therapy is that it's so complicated, so that you can't teach this in a self-help book. So, but ideally there would be a way to do this that's simple enough to apply it on your own, right? Like to being able to make it help efficiently. So that's why we chose the internal family systems model to test. The other hypothesis there is that, not as CBT, it doesn't really focus on just the present, but on the past. So the hypothesis is that all the different parts developed as coping mechanisms in the past as a reaction to different situations that you were exposed to very often. And the other type of parts were parts that were protected by those coping mechanisms. So you have the protectors and the exiles. That's the exiles, right?
Yeah.
I hope that wasn't too complicated.
No, it can be a little bit daunting, to be honest. Yeah, when you first get into it. I got one of the IFS self-therapy books. I think there's one that's recommended by the founder. And it basically runs you through this kind of standardized format of how you can start a dialogue with these parts of yourself. And like you mentioned, usually the first parts that you encounter are the protectors, the sort of parts of you that have defended you in difficult situations, maybe in the past, and are trying to, in a way, protect you from feeling some of the very intense reactive emotions that might be in the exiles, the sort of maybe vulnerable, childlike parts of yourself. And then, it's sort of trying to, in a way, appease or calm down the protectors enough so you can make contact with the exiles and release some of the emotional content in there. It's a very interesting process. I do have to say, it seems sometimes a little bit like the model of the psyche is a bit oversimplified. You know, there's a sort of model where there's a core self, a true self that you really are, and then there's the parts. And it's like, maybe there's just parts. I don't know. From a sort of Buddhist psychological perspective, who knows? But it does seem to be helpful for many people, just on a practical level, sort of pragmatically. But it did seem like, if I understand correctly, that the last time you tried it with Rethink, the results were not as impressive as you would have hoped, or is that not true?
So when we measured at week 12 and week 16, so this is when the course ends, and then 4 weeks later, the results were not significant yet. When we measured 6 months after, I think they were significantly different from zero, but I'm not sure how they were in comparison to the CBT course. So we still have to calculate that to make a reliable statement.
Okay.
I'll inform you when we're done with it. Yeah, but the author of the book that we used for the program, the self-therapy internal family systems book, they were very generous and let us use this book as the key workbook for the people. So they worked through the exercises and the bits as well. I think that's the same book, right? That you were mentioning.
I think it is. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. And just anecdotally, I'm curious if you had some stories from people who had a good experience with it, who found it helpful.
Interestingly, most people found it very helpful. So the self-reports on the quality of the program and on the program satisfaction were really good. And also people didn't drop out more often than those in the CBT program. So it's not that they didn't enjoy taking part, or that they thought it's not helpful. It's just that, yeah, after it might take longer to work, or it doesn't work. I'm not quite sure. I'll inform you later.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting though, like a very interesting pilot approach. Yeah. And maybe just interesting for folks to hear what the sort of main approach is that you use at Rethink, which is the third wave CBT.
Yeah,
So maybe just
we
give
call it
folks a
our flagship
general,
program now.
so maybe just give folks a very general outline of how the programs work in terms of, you said there's an assessment before and after. You do this kind of very evidence-based approach, but it's quite different from usual psychotherapy. Yeah.
So we have 8 weeks in a row where you have a weekly session with 5 to 6 of your peers that are similar to you and where they are at in their life at the moment. So like a group that you can bond with well. And then there's a trained facilitator that hosts the session weekly. It's 1.5 hours. And in between the sessions, you read one chapter of the workbook with a lot of practical exercises and also texts. We might transfer them into videos one day. And then every week at the end of the session, you are asked about typical effectiveness drivers. So, for example, how engaging, how exciting the session was for you, how you liked the content, and also how you felt with the group and the facilitator, the support that you got. So, and then if any person drops below a certain threshold, so if they're not very, very happy, then like our therapist reaches out and tries to like help them to to navigate this better. So it's really important to us that all of the participants come out very very happy and in the best case healed as much as they possibly could.
Yeah.
I hope I described everything. I forgot one component. There is this community that we have as well. So you are in a chat group with your little group, with your peer group, and you post your home practice review each week before the session. You have a buddy to make sure that this really happens. And then you have this larger group where also our therapist, that our therapist supervises, where you can ask questions to an expert. So sometimes it happens that during the session there is a case where also the facilitator doesn't really know what to advise, or where they want to have a second opinion on something, and then our therapist jumps in.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it just a tremendously helpful program for myself as well. And what I liked so much is that as a facilitator, I was kind of going through the program myself. I wasn't the therapist. I wasn't giving it. I was doing it with everybody. And I have to say that this approach of really having practical homework every week, like actual exercises you plan in that you actually do them, that really started to have the effect both for myself and pretty much everyone else in the group, I think. And it's remarkable how often psychotherapists don't give very concrete, clear
Absolutely.
homework or exercises.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And
is there
that's
research on this?
that might be the reason why the program can already be effective after 12 weeks, while with therapy you need half a year to have the same effects. So
Is that right? Wow.
it seems that doing some of the work up front and really quickly can already boost your mental health a lot. Like I think the ideal format, we tracked home practice, and like indeed the home practice adherence. So how much percent of the homework people did dropped over the course of the weeks. So 8 weeks is maybe still acceptable, but then like the program should end, and it would probably be advisable to have a fresh up a few weeks later or months later, so that then people are again ready to get new content.
Yeah. And it's such a big contrast, I feel like, compared to, I mean, if you look at classical psychoanalysis, it's the polar opposite. I mean, you spend years and years in analysis and then sometimes not even very, impressive results that you're happy with. So this is really like a fast track kind of, it seems. And it's amazing. I didn't know that you can get very comparable results compared to 6 months of actual therapy. It's
I'd have to check when exactly therapy has the same benefit. I think it's 6 months to 1 year.
yeah. Wow. Wow. And in terms of adherence, I mean, that of course was a big challenge. Also, I noticed as a facilitator in the group, making sure people actually did it or did the readings and actually, and myself, of course, doing the exercises. I skipped sometimes, of course. And yeah, what were some of the ways that you thought of to make sure that people really did do it? Because as we talked about before, behavior change can be a really challenging thing, whatever field it is, whether it's sort of physical health behaviors or in this case, sort of mental health behaviors.
Yeah,
How can you help people?
I'm keen to hear what you think. Like, what helped your group or yourself the most in our program to keep doing the important bits?
Yeah. I think if I recall correctly, for a lot of people, the buddy system was actually quite helpful in the sense that they felt like they let their buddy down in a way if they didn't do their piece,
You're so mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You just give your body to.
Social pressure, it totally works. Yeah. I think that was a big part. And I think it also really helped that part of the process was connecting more with your values, with your intrinsic values, what you intrinsically care about, and how that motivates the kind of behaviors you want to implement. But I have to say, it was for many people, including myself, the topic of values can be quite abstract and vague. So it was a very like philosophically stimulating session. I remember the one that we did on values. Like, what is values and what's the difference with goals? And maybe we could talk about that a little bit, actually, like how important that is in the sort of third wave CBT approach, values.
So the value-based goal setting is part of the third from the like third wave CBT. It's part of the ACT model, acceptance commitment therapy,
Yeah.
and so the reason why values seem to matter is that it in ACT, or the story behind it is that we can't seem to be able to get rid of suffering, but we can find the thing that's worth suffering for, and this is most likely like connected to what you really value in life, because that's what you want, no matter if it's costly for you. So yeah, figuring that out and then aligning the actions with how you best get there, or how you can best reach that, seems to be also a chance to reframe this whole deficiency thinking. So I need to get rid of my sleep problems, my rumination, or my anxiety. But then you can say, okay, I think for example, having an impact in the mental health field, I need to be less socially anxious when interacting with important stakeholders. So I know why I want that, and that's why I will tackle it now, and not just because I don't know, I don't want to have the experience. So it gives you the
Fascinating.
why, and not only the what. The goal would just be the what, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and you can be perfectly aligned with the why in your behavior. You can do the right thing that's value aligned without hitting the goal, and so you can still be proud of yourself. If you just have the goal, you'll just become I don't know, like an overactive weasel that's never happy.
We wouldn't want that. Yeah.
You wouldn't want that. Yeah, you
Yeah.
value something that you can't reach, no matter how good you do it, but also you can't. Yeah, but also you. Yeah, like
Yeah.
for example, I'm thinking of an example. Do you have an example from your course? Maybe an anonymized one.
Mm. To think. I think in specific case doesn't particularly come to mind, but I have a lot of personal experience with what happens when your goals seem to become empty, in the sense that you're pursuing this goal, but you can't really feel why you care about it anymore. And it seems like that is sort of the value goal connection has gotten lost somehow. And then on the other end, you can be deeply engaged in an activity that you just intrinsically care about, and you're not goal oriented at
Mhm.
all, but you're deeply
Mhm.
fulfilled. And that's such an interesting contrast, sort of. And I do suspect that that's a big part of why values sort of they bring the reward into the present in a way, instead of only when I get to the goal
Mhm.
do I get the reward, which is part of what I read in Steve Hayes' book, A Liberated Mind. Fantastic book, by the way, on ACT. I found that such an eye opener. Like, yeah, that's probably a big reason why this would help with behavior change. You're bringing the reward into the present, and that motivates you to keep going, not
Right.
just
Yeah.
when you get to the goal.
Well
Um,
said. Yeah.
yeah, just really fascinating. Um, I'm actually also curious. ACT, I know, has been applied in a school context. We talked
Mhm.
about it a little bit before. Um, and it just seems to me, out of this, this big global mental health burden we have, why are not more people trying to implement these sort of things, such as third wave CBT? A lot of
Mhm.
it is pretty general. You could apply it to
Yeah.
pretty much anyone in a way. Why are we not teaching this to kids? I'm very glad to hear there are some countries where they're doing this a bit now, but
Yeah.
it just seems a no-brainer to me. Why is this so innovative? Why is this so new, Um, what do you think?
I heard that in school systems in high income countries, it can be harder to implement new contents in school. I don't know all the reasons. I know that for the country I live in Germany, we have different states, and in all the different states, there's different rules, like different small governments that rule over the state. So you'd have to like convince all the 16 states, right? And that's like just a bunch of work, and it's also at least here there's not a lot of money put into education, and
Hmm.
this also means that with the stuff that works in schools, they're all overworked. They're like overworked. The burnout rate is extremely high. So
Hmm.
if you go to them and ask them to like implement another project, you're just like, I don't know how I should do the work I currently have. So
Yeah.
I did a bunch of work in schools. I had 3 pilot projects, and so I was lucky enough to being able to convince single teachers, but also those were exceptions, and it was yeah, it's just hard to scale those to get everyone on board.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem like there's a lot of red tape to overcome. And I do recall one of the reports that Charity Entrepreneurship made was about positive education. In other words, including
Mhm.
positive psychology in the way you do education, either as part of the curriculum or training teachers in this, so it becomes part of students' experience.
Would be great. Yeah.
Would be great. I thought the same. And then I read the report, and basically the main reason they dropped it as a potential charity to found was precisely the tractability of it. It just seemed very, very unlikely that you can manage to get, yeah, the high level politics to agree to put it in there. Um, so yeah, maybe we need more of a grassroots approach in that way, like just at the local level, small initiatives, hopefully trying to scale up from there. I don't know what might work, but and of course, yeah, another approach could be parenting. If we could improve somehow parenting styles to prevent the arising of mental health issues.
Yeah, that's true. There is a great program in the US that has been distributed in a few states that seems to work pretty well for that. It's also pretty cost effective. It's called Triple P system. You heard of that?
No, no, very cool.
It's on the list of social programs that work, and they have measured also some objective outcomes. So like the statistics of how often children are in the emergency room, etc.,
Yeah,
and that that this on a state level had a significant impact.
wow. And do you know what are some of the interventions that they use? Is it sort of trying to prevent abuse in the household and sort of trying to prevent trauma, or do you know the general approach?
I think it's an individually tailored approach. They get a course on parenting, I believe, and on
Mhm.
also on emotional regulation, but I don't know the details.
Okay. Yeah. It just seems like it would make a lot of sense. I remember reading in Bessel van der Kolk's famous book on trauma. He mentioned some statistics there in the United States of how many people very likely have experienced significant trauma in their lives, and it just blew me away of how much it actually is and how recently this topic has even become acknowledged by the mental health institutions. You know that this is even a thing, that
Yeah,
this can be, that this is actually a cause of a lot of mental health problems. And he was sort of saying there, hinting in the book of, if we could do prevention on this, how much more effective would that be?
oh,
We're
yeah,
dealing with the issue at the back end. This is
yeah,
completely
yeah. That's a
backwards.
nice thing. Yeah.
I mean,
Mm.
bizarre. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it would be great to have like a parenting course directly when before you give birth, right? Where you also have this how to give birth course. Like, why not directly have yeah, a parenting course as well?
yeah, yeah, why not? And of course, some might argue that that could introduce some cultural sensitivities, of course, because what is correct parenting, and but
I mean
I don't know.
that the one that lets you raise like a social, emotional, healthy child more likely, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There really
At
are
least
some
you might want to
universals.
know how to do that more likely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fascinating. Yeah. One of the potential programs that I did a teacher training in called Cultivating Emotional Balance was developed by Paul Ekman, if you're familiar, the emotion researcher.
The
And
emotions guru.
the emotions guru, exactly. The main stretch of that program was to sort of help people, emotional regulation skills. That's a very big part of it. And improving the ability to recognize emotions in yourself and others, partly based on facial expressions, of course.
So
He's famous
important.
for studying micro expressions. You can, oh, he's actually angry, or is he afraid, or what does he need right now? Um, but I think the trouble with that kind of program was that it was a 42-hour program. And so we were sort of encouraged to, like, maybe if you can introduce this in schools. I just thought 42 hours, that's a long time.
It's a whole week,
Um,
a whole working week for a
yeah,
grown up.
exactly. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's
So
researchers need to collaborate with user experience specialists, right, and people that know how to do um, yeah, yeah, teaching and pedagogy. Yeah.
hmm, yeah. So maybe this is more like in the private sector, like some of the companies that you worked at, they
Yeah,
would understand this better, maybe.
yeah, probably.
Yeah,
But as said, there needs it's tough to sell something that no one wants to pay money for. So who would pay
yeah,
for doing this in schools, and who
exactly.
would actually do it, not
Yeah,
being paid for it?
yeah, yeah.
But
If
yeah,
you,
as I said, I know the Kiva program um, is a good role model. It's distributed in Finland. I checked.
yeah, yeah, definitely check
It
that out.
teaches social and emotional skills, and I think also some of the mental health related coping mechanisms. And they have proven it scientifically. In Germany, we also have this list of evidence-based intervention programs for schools that you can
Hmm.
implement in schools if you want. But I think most schools haven't heard of it, and also probably wouldn't act on it if they knew it exists.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. That's great to hear that there are, more projects coming up of this kind. And would you think that what you're doing at Rethink Wellbeing at the moment, would you want to start scaling that to potentially reach some of these younger populations in the sort of general public? Um,
The program that we currently plan to develop uses large language models. So we will very likely also try to replace parts of our flagship program with with even more cost-effective options. And if that works, our next target group would more be digitally savvy people in low and middle income countries.
Mm.
But I could imagine that as soon as we showed that this is safe for a vulnerable target group, to maybe also reach out to more to younger people. The problem also is that it's legally even harder to serve younger people because you have to be
Yeah.
aware of more pitfalls.
Yeah, that's a so you have to get permission from the parents in a lot of cases to
That might
do
be
anything.
one, yeah,
Yeah.
be one issue.
Fascinating. So would that be sort of a large language model taking you through a protocol? Can you say a bit more, or is it still in the initial
But it's,
phases?
it's it's still in the making. But basically, we want to try for all the different components that we have in the CPT flagship program to let this do by large language models and see how well the large language model can take it over, and then try how much more scalable we can do the whole ordeal
Yeah.
without losing any of the engagement and the user experience, the great user experience that we actually currently provide.
Wow. Really cool.
I don't
So
know if that
then,
will work, right? I mean,
yeah,
in my head, it kind of does, but let's see.
it's good to try it. Yeah.
That's why it's a pilot research project.
Yeah. So that it wouldn't even need a facilitator then.
um, I don't know yet.
Hmm.
Maybe the facilitator wouldn't need to work that hard. I think
Yeah.
I think we won't be able to do it completely without facilitation because the human contact seems to be an important point um, also in the adherence, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a
I don't
lot of
know how
sense.
motivated you would feel by having a digital buddy, but
Yeah.
can't be really disappointed of you, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you could even argue whether you would even want to do that. Like, is it even ethically advisable to replace human to human contact with just machine? Is that even a desirable development in our society in a way? I've heard some
Um,
criticisms of,
I'm pragmatic there. If it works and there's no other option for help available, for example, in Nigeria, I
yeah,
think would be fine. But that's
yeah.
just my very uninformed first guess. So maybe it's not, and I forgot an ethical point that I haven't thought of yet.
No, I definitely agree. If there's nothing available and this clearly is shown to be helpful, I mean,
I think it's
that's
what
great.
we need to keep in mind is still that for severe cases and for complex cases, and probably also for deeper seated issues, there will be more help needed, and that still very likely will be delivered by a
Yeah,
human. But if there is nothing else available, it's better to do that than to do nothing.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, do you think there's any inherent drawback to doing digital contact, even with between people? Of course, we did most of this over Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. But you could argue that having an actual physical presence in the room, making actual eye contact, there's always this weird not quite making eye contact when you're on the,
I know what you
which
mean.
gives me anxiety. I don't know why people, it's a weird thing. Yeah, I mean, does that potentially detract from the
Are they
therapeutic
looking at
benefit?
me, or are they just looking at their self-image if their hair is still
Yeah,
correct?
exactly.
We don't know.
Yeah, nobody
What am I
knows.
even looking at?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you think?
Um, so the question is if you think it might be better to have some of the support in person. And I think that the answer to this is still yes.
Hmm.
That it's good to have human support in person. But I also believe that this part is something that can better be fostered with friends group and family groups or communes or
Hmm.
local communities that don't necessarily have to be therapeutic or like supportive in a way, and as in they are trying to help you tackle your problems.
Hmm.
So this just feeling supported and integrated has a large buffer offers a large buffer against the life stress becoming mental health issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise they found, getting scientific again,
Mm.
when they compared digital therapy and as in people talking over video cam or over phone, and in person, they compare it, they find similar results.
Yeah.
So just for the delivery of the therapy, it doesn't seem to matter, or for the coaching.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it kind of also segues maybe towards my last question, which is, I mean, as you mentioned, like the social support component is such a big protector against these kind of mental health problems and so on. Like, how much of the mental health suffering that people experience is caused by systemic factors? Like, there's something about the way we are organizing our society as a whole
Yeah,
that is actually generating these issues, and we're trying to mop with the faucet open, as we say in Dutch. It's we are need to address the root causes at this more
yeah.
systemic level. um, yeah, what do you think might be some of those systemic forces, and shouldn't be we working on that level rather than helping people directly?
Yeah, that was the second pillar I mentioned before. So just that more working on the way that we structure our environments and our systems,
Yeah,
and likely in the long term, this would be the even more effective thing to do.
yeah,
There's a movement in very modern societies that people start to live in communes again. So
yeah,
as like a replacement of family, or like an extension of the family, and that seems to work. That seems to work well. Like not having couples or single people, single grown-ups, or even like small families separated from each other, but like having more of a tribe-like
yeah.
tribe-like living style. And yeah.
That's right. Is there
Like the
research on this
social
that it?
exclusion and and isolation and loneliness are one of the largest drivers, definitely, that people also mention when they are asked what's burdening them.
Yeah, yeah, and that has just become so uprooted in sort of. I mean, it's a question how far do you have to go back where that was still normal kind of thing, but it does seem like, especially in a country like Holland, when I went to Nepal, for example, places like that, it's still very much communal in many places. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
and
think
it.
like the days on which I feel like my best are the days which I spend on like community weeks and community weekends of like certain tribes I like, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
going
affected
camping with your
autism
friends.
communities, or
Yeah, yeah, it is true, right? Yeah. And I have noticed this also in my just sort of general circle, a revival of interest in this kind of eco villages, like you said,
yeah,
communes,
right.
this sort of thing. Um, and it does seem there's a real hunger for it in this time. Like really not maybe regressing to like a real tribal sort of hunter gatherer
Yeah,
type of situation, but can we bring back some of the benefits of how we used to live ancestrally without
yeah.
sacrificing the benefits of modernity? Wouldn't that be a good thing? Um, yeah, and I guess nothing is stopping us in principle from living
From
along
testing
that.
if that will.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, if we just rebuild the main life contexts or life environments that people usually hang out in most of their lives, like the workplace, the school, and the home, like how we live, then yeah, we should have fixed the external factors side. But it sounds easy, it's not.
yeah, yeah. That's the trouble.
And
Yeah,
the political and lack of safety that currently everyone experiences in the world also doesn't
doesn't
really
help.
help to feel safe.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Many people seem to be anxious about the future, and that's one reason. That's one reason. I think the statistics show that one reason why the mental health issues seem to rise as well.
Yeah, I read this in the last report coming out of Harvard in young adults, that was one of the main factors that they mentioned: a real lack of feeling meaning and purpose, and a connection to a viable future, like really feeling hopeless about the future.
Yeah,
Um, And of course, if you're in a sort of effective altruism space, studying all the urgent world problems, that can really exacerbate this feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, looking at the time, I think it might be maybe this is a good place to round it off. If you have any last thoughts, anything you might want to share with people, where they can find your work, where they can find Rethink Wellbeing, if you have a website or anything like that.
Yeah, if you visit rethinkwellbeing.org, maybe we can put it in the comments as well. You
Yeah,
can check out the opportunities we have to attend our programs if you want to boost your coping skills and your general productivity and well-being. Or we are also always happy to get to know people that would like to ramp up their facilitator game and host a group as you did, Timo. Maybe you
very
can
cool.
share a few words about why this experience was cool. That would be a good ending.
Sure. Yeah, I have to say, it was very mixed motives for me. It was partly really sort of I wanted to be of help to people. I think that there's so much mental health suffering in my sort of age group, and I see a lot of it around me, and it can be so challenging to get the help that you need. And so services like this that really make it so accessible and at pretty much no cost. I mean, I think there's an optional donation system that's really amazing. And I wanted to learn more about CBT myself, just for my own mental health and well-being and so on. So I thought, why not? I can do both things at the same time, and you learn so much doing this. It's ridiculously fun. So I recommend it. So
What was the thing that you learned that you feel most motivated about? Is it the
hmm.
facilitation skills or the CBT skills or?
Yeah, I think mostly more detail about CBT. I didn't know that much about it. I had some experience with ACT, which is sort of a big part of this third wave. But I learned a bunch of new things about like thought restructuring that I is not a big part of ACT. And yeah, also I think the behavior change part was very interesting for me. Like how you can go about changing your habits, which can be really difficult. So
That's not true. Yeah, and we,
yeah.
we really try to offer the most effective version of all of these. That's aligned with the state of the art research on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just one comment on that matter. You don't need to have any experience with mental health or therapy or coaching topics. Facilitating a group can happen if you only have a little bit of experience running groups. This can also be teaching or managing a small team.
Yeah. Yeah, good to mention that because, of course, I'm not a therapist either, and I mostly had experience facilitating like discussion groups on effective altruism, or I led a meditation group for a while, and it worked perfectly fine. So I really encourage people to apply who think they might, maybe I'm not a good fit. Just apply. Why not? You can find out. So great. That's maybe a good note to end on. And thank you so
Thanks a
much,
lot,
Inga, for
Timo.
your
It was
time.
fun talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.